Web3.
Web3.
Web3 is going to be the internet of value.
Web3 is a tool like any other. A hammer can be used to build a house and it can be used to smash a head in. It's a weapon and a tool at the same time.
Jan Rosner, co-founder and CEO of video game development and entertainment company
One Earth Rising.
The same way Web3 was misused in many ways, rug pulls and scams and so forth, it can do incredibly great things. One of these things is provide ownership. Another one is validating the ownership or validating the source. Where does this information come from? And so if we can get to a point where a New York Times has a validated wallet address, article that comes out of the New York Times gets basically watermarked on the asset itself, on the article itself, you can have an AI run and say like, just pull for me all the articles that are originally from the New York Times, check if they have been altered, check if there's any alternative articles like it out there that are not watermarked by the New York Times. Have they been altered? And so you can easily provide the readers with validated sources. You can be sure it came from that source. And I think that's something we are missing right now. There's so many people out there that either just sharing what has been, recreated by somebody else or not knowing if this came from the original source because it cannot be validated.
Jan, it is so good to see you. I still remember when we first met quite a while ago, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, and our mutual friend Peter's, I think one of his studio events that he hosts, which is this gorgeous artist loft in FiDi. And there was a jazz band going, there was wine, there was good conversation. And I thought you were super cool, but it wasn't until I would say like a year ago that we actually started getting a bit closer when we met at a Spring Place event. And I think you gave me a hug and you're like, what is that on the back of your arm? And I tried to pretend like I was a robot. I'm just kidding. But we started talking about continuous glucose monitors and our passion for longevity and biohacking, and a more beautiful friendship emerged from that. And so I'm really excited to chat with you today and to include you in the conversation with Michael and I.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Amna and Michael. This is absolutely great. And it's always easy and great to meet in a New York setting over jazz and fun people to hang around, right? It's always great, yeah. And it's actually very true. I'm so surprised, and that's actually also a highlighting a good friendship or the foundation for a good friendship when we have known each other for such a long time and never really asked what we do, right? So it's just like these just mutual understanding.
So yeah, and then we have Michael as well. So hello. Jan, it'd be great if you could share a little bit about your background and then what got you interested in the space as well. You have a very, very unique background.
Yeah, well, yes, I do. I have to go back a little bit further. So originally from Germany, Jan Rosner, and that gives away a little bit also my accent probably. And I spent the majority of my younger years in the military, in the German Air Force. I spent a good amount of time there as an officer and then helicopter pilot. In the last couple of years in my career, I also then transitioned as a pilot also into the field of drones, reconnaissance drones. Historically, interesting. We leased those drones from the Israeli government, which is fun, and was actually also that led me to one of my most fun times in the military, spending 3 months in Tel Aviv, being trained by the IDF on that system. And then followed by 5 deployments to Afghanistan, a little less fun, but very, very interesting from a learning perspective and also activity perspective. Then I ventured out. I stopped my military career and started my first business venture. I started my first company, a digital marketing agency, as you do when you come out of the military, and started that in Berlin, Germany. Focused really on digital marketing, including social media marketing, including digital assets here on Google, SEO, etc. We grew successfully in Germany and then expanded the company into the US. That was my ticket here. And then focused also on using video games in that spectrum to use them as a vehicle for marketing messaging, really building games that can be used as a dialogue function, as a mechanism for marketing messaging to bring these people together. So we did this for a couple of different brands, including the animal rights organization PETA, built their first ever PlayStation game in a whole array of different countries. It was downloaded millions of times and really showed me the the vast impact that this whole industry can make, and also how big it is, the gaming industry. And so that opened the door for me getting more involved there. Started and bootstrapped my first gaming studio, focused on indie games, on PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, Xbox. And yeah, there was a big, great learning curve there. And then with the advent of the Web3 revolution and the metaverses and all the buzzwords, we focused then on the technology pieces, really bringing technology to the forefront, cutting edge technology that allows ownership models. And then also, building the foundation, really, that's what we do now at One Earth Rising, the foundation of whatever becomes the next in the metaverse. So really the tools that you need for that. And besides that, my passion for longevity topics, the Oura rings, all of the above, all of these technical advancements, and then also automation in my home, all of these things that can make my life better and for longer time better. So that's what my passion is. That's me in a nutshell.
Fabulous.
It's such an impressive and unique background. Would you say that your time in the military and working in tech kind of inspired you to go down that route of biohacking, longevity, automation, or was it something that is newer for you?
That particular part is a little bit newer for me. That definitely is the part where I consider myself lucky to come across great human beings that inspired me to, focus more on my health and focus more. And, my dear parents, I love them to death, but they're also from a generation that was more focused on party, little Woodstock style, and not so much take care of their bodies, which unfortunately shows more and more the older they get. So that is definitely, in a negative way, I must say, an example of or an inspiration for me to just, I don't want to live forever, but as long as I live, I want to live good. So that was definitely a driver for allowing myself to get more into sports, recreational sports that allow me more flexibility, etc., but also taking care of my body. As you know, I turned vegan for that reason or stayed vegan for that reason, and recently cut alcohol, which is great. I would never, as a German, it's almost a sacrilege to admit, but don't maybe we cut that piece out. Just so, it's great.
And what would you say do you use anything to track it, or what are your favorite devices to use to track different things?
So 100% my Oura ring, always with me. Love this device. And that really helped me to understand better my sleep pattern. So in my 44 years old now, I definitely have considered myself, or I should say, I do want to prioritize sleep more. Doesn't always work, but it's definitely on my agenda to do this more often. And also the intermittent fasting and general fasting. There's this incredible series that you and I started watching, Limitless with Chris Hemsworth, which really inspired me to start the fasting process. I was always against this. It was like, I'm happy to cut so many things out of my life to feel better and make it longer. But food was one of the elements that I couldn't really give up. And the fasting process now is so great. And I do this with a bunch of my friends, and we have actually seen such great improvements, but also vice versa. Your level of comfort and your level of quality of life is so much higher now. So that if you do, for example, eat late and a slice of pizza comes in late because you went out somewhere and you didn't have the chance to eat earlier, oh my God, it's now almost like a hangover because you have used to get your body to such a great excellence. So now it punishes you when you get the late stage pizza slice in. It's quite an experience. Yeah.
I had an extraordinary experience finally trying multi-day fasting. I had a lot of fear of the unknown, I suppose, about this, but finally tried. And that first time I only went 60 hours, so 2.5 days. I broke my fast with a little bit of salami because I learned later I should have been having a little salt in my water. So that I needed to replenish my salt when I did finally break that fast. And what happened after 2.5 days of fasting was nothing. Nothing happened. I went back to normal. And that was an extraordinary experience for me. It actually changed my relationship with food forevermore because I didn't know I could go 2.5 days without eating. So Uh, I used to, I realized only by contrast that when I traveled, I wondered where I would fit in eating. I had quite a bit of anxiety around going hungry. And after that experience that actually I don't have to eat, I did that that small experience created this amazing shift. Like, why don't I only eat what I like and what is good for me? It all felt more opt in instead of compulsory.
Yeah, is a challenge to break out of the norms that we've got so used to, right? And including like the 3 meals a day and when we have to eat them, and not eating when you're hungry, but you eat because it's time to eat. And so, yeah, I can definitely attest to that. And it's impressive that you went 60 hours. I have yet to go there. I think my maximum so far on the continuous fast was, I believe, 30 hours was the maximum. I do know. I mean, the beauty of a fast, showing you not only the resilience of the body, but really unlocking new potential, healing your body, being more aware, being more clear in your mind, and really being a much better driver in the seat that's your body. It's incredible. It's really, encourage everyone to do so.
Agreed. Me too.
Have both of you guys ever had any biohacking fails or that you would not do again?
That's a good question. Yeah, biohacking fails. Michael, go first if you have any.
Oh, I have one, which is I tried multiphasic sleep. So this took off among some nerd communities on the internet. I guess wow, I think it's really been decades. So the idea is, instead of sleeping once a night, you can decrease the total amount that you have to sleep if you just take naps, just like commit to naps, basically. But on a schedule of frequent, like, small naps. So there was anecdotal evidence that this works well. So I was like, well, I'll try it. And I would say that it does not work well. This is a total myth. Like the goal of these multiphasic sleep hackers is to sleep for a total of only, let's say, like 3 hours a night. The idea being that you adapt to this different schedule and your body just switches into REM sleep more efficiently. So I gave this my all, and no, what it actually produced was like chronic sleep deprivation.
Oh, no.
I would have been so surprised if you say something different. I mean, all the different literature that I followed and all the different recommendations now. I mean, getting into REM sleep, the amount of time that takes, getting into deep sleep, etc. So that's one of the biggest criteria that I have for myself, is that I just came back from a trip from San Francisco, like Miami, San Francisco, and back. For some reason, I was super awake when I got up the next morning coming back from San Francisco. It was only one day, so it was not really jet lagged. But and then I crashed in the afternoon, and I looked at my watch, which I didn't do in the morning, and I only had 3.5 hours of sleep. It's like, oh, no wonder. And it's really like I look now at the metrics of deep and REM sleep, and optimizing for that. That's really my goal. And to be honest, I mean, I go with your statement earlier, Michael. It's the fear of the unknown really keeps me in check, not to try so far anything that I'm not super convinced of. So I do have to admit, as of now, I can't really think of any biohack fail that I had so far. Amna, did you have any?
Now I'm trying to think of if I did. Oh, I think mine was the multi-day fast. I tried the Prolon fast kit that you get. It is a fasting mimicking diet that was created by a doctor, and it is meant to trick your body into thinking you are not eating for 5 days, but in fact you are eating small little meals. And I've done it successfully many times, but there was a couple times where I introduced things that I shouldn't have, or I wasn't paying attention to the directions, and then you just end up cranky for.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, obviously, I only ended up with 30 hours of fasting so far. So that has been a fail so far, right? I've not made it to my 4 days. That's actually the goal that I wanted to try once. And it's like, it's naked fear. It's naked fear that keeps me from it. Yeah.
certain that the reason why I succeeded with my first fast is that I had a partner. In my case, my wife, and so I've developed a little fasting protocol. If you're curious about multi-day fasting, I've come up with a little program for doing it. And it works like this. You need a buddy. This is fasting with the buddy system. And now I do many multi-day fasts, but all following this rule, which is we're going to start fasting together. You pick a time. This is when we begin. This will be our last meal. And either of us can stop the fast at any time for any reason, and we'll both stop. Okay, so we will stop together. And then what we're going to do is count up how long we fasted, multiply by 10, and try fasting again at that time. So if you only go a day, fine. We're going to try fasting again in 10 days. Fasted for 3 days, great. We're going to try again in a month. So there's no failure condition of this, right? It kind of takes the anxiety down. There's no way to do it wrong. Like whatever the outcome is the outcome. And then we try again 10x later.
I like that. It also puts you in the position where you already have your schedule in front of you rather than trying to fit a 4-day fast somewhere in your life, right? And that never really works. Because I always find a reason why, oh no, I can't do it then because, if I'm weak, I have this pitch or I have this and that and, I want to do the next workout, etc. Yeah, for sure. That's really good. I like that.
So now I'm literally fasting 10% of the year, but there's no way to do it wrong. It's just like I'm along for the ride. Like, is this going to be a 2-day fast or is this going to be the day that I go 4 or 5? And
very impressive. Very good. All right.
The outcome. Yeah.
Great.
I'm happy that got recorded here. And that's good. Very good advice.
Yes, you heard it here first.
Yes.
I wanted to kind of take the conversation in a slightly different direction. I know that we're all very passionate about misinformation and data. So there is a theory or a topic about stuck in traffic versus contributing to traffic thinking. Maybe you could share a little bit about some practical steps that social media users can take so that they can avoid spreading misinformation and explain a little bit about what those two theories are.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a topic very close to my heart, not only because I work in tech now, I work in Web3 technology now, where, the validation of ownership is very a strong one way. I mean, this is kind of like the source of this or the foundation of that. At the same time, it's the problem solving mechanism that we can use in the future, combining this with artificial intelligence. And at the same time, also, I spent, as I said earlier, 13 years in the military. So, being in a mis or disinformation society means that these cycles of mis and disinformation can lead to me being deployed somewhere because it just leads to a conflict, right? And then information that gets shared within this conflict is super important. I was actually affected by this directly when my first deployment was in Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina back then. And I was there as a 19-year-old soldier, basically standing on Sniper Alley, the left side cheering you on, the right side spitting at you. So when we did a great deal of help, or we conducted a great deal of work there that helped the community, like building hospitals, building little children playgrounds, etc., and so forth. But the only information that came back to Germany that my parents read in the papers was, German soldiers in Sarajevo go into a brothel. Okay. That was it, right? That was it. And that basically also that led to many of my peers questioning why I went to get deployed, why I went there and what did I do there. And just to put this into context, like because we were soldiers and we were affected by it, we were much more open to the information to also look into the politics behind that. Why were we sent there? And many people, well, either don't care or don't know where to get the information from. So the reason back then was just obviously conflict in Yugoslavia back then, former Yugoslavia. And so where we had basically an influx of people fleeing the wall coming into Germany. Basically, our infrastructure was at the brink of collapse. So the government basically has two choices or two mechanisms or like instruments, right? It can do democracy and diplomacy and trying to wind down the war, the conflict on the side, and then so the refugees can go back into their countries. Or if the parties don't listen to you, they can send troops. Right, those are the main two options that you have, besides sanctions, etc. So after diplomacy didn't work, we sent troops to just calm everything down. The parties at the table, etc. And the infrastructure collapse really led to increased prices, people getting annoyed, but didn't really know why. They just said to the government, do something. And so that was the output that was actually getting us into this war zone. So through this story, what I want to highlight is really it's a complex topic that goes beyond or above the most heads in our society, because it's just diving too deep. It doesn't really concern you. It's just something happens and you want it to stop. So you're voting with your voice and choice towards getting it stopped. So that now, considering taking this into the reality, into the now, adding social media to this mix, which makes it even more complicated. We are facing a real problem where the most important aspect that I can give to any parent and child and young people especially, is to look into the information and to validate the information. One of the most horrific conversations that I recently had in a pizza joint was two young ladies that were telling me, oh yeah, that's actually very true. I never really check it out. I just forward it. I just repost it, not checking it. It's and that is the source. Oh, it's not the source. The source is the misinformation, but that's the amplifier, right? That's the fuel in the fire, just like sharing it wildly without even checking where it came from, or if the information that you share is true. So nowadays it's more who's fastest rather than who's right. And that is a huge problem that we have in society. And I think that, this can be amplified the problem can be amplified by AI, but it can also be solved by AI, and can also be solved by AI in combination with Web3 technology that can validate the sources. So it was a little bit of a lengthy answer so my recommendation for the youth is to validate and just take some time. Don't need to be the first to share. Make sure that what you share is true, and that you can stand behind it and defend it at any given time.
And maybe even, if you could, somebody like a youth could take the information that they see, plug it into an AI source to check it speedily. And then, although there are still hallucinations in AI, so I don't know, but.
Well, we're in the beginning, right? So very similar to looking at Web3, looking at AI, we're literally like we were at the beginning of the internet, right? So there's so many things that still go wrong. And in my daily routine, I actually, just before our call here, I jumped off a really heated conversation on LinkedIn where I exchanged, or I put a post out. In our gaming world, for example, if you play a game, you put money into this, you put time into this, and then basically the company decides to shut it down, you lose everything because you don't own anything, right? So it's a reality right now that Web3 can solve. So, and I just highlighted multiple different aspects of how these pain points can be solved or can be minimized, and Web3 was one of them. Oh my God, it opened the door for the truly the haters, if I can call them like that. To just demolish and bash the Web3 industry. And for good reasons, because a lot of that, Web3 is a tool like any other. A hammer can be used to build a house, and it can be used to smash a head in. So it's a weapon and a tool at the same time. So the same way Web3 was misused in many ways, rug pulls and scams and so forth, it can do incredibly great things. And one of that these things is provide ownership. Another one is validating the ownership or validating the source. Where does this information comes from? And so if we can get to a point where a New York Times has a validated wallet address and an article that comes out of the New York Times gets basically watermarked on the asset itself, on the article itself, you can have an AI run and say, like, just pull for me all the articles that are originally from the New York Times, check if they have been altered, check if there's any alternative articles like it out there that are not watermarked by the New York Times. Have they been altered? And so you can easily provide the readers with validated sources. If you trust the New York Times, it's completely up to you, right? That, I don't even want to go into that discussion. Whatever source you trust, you can be sure it came from that source. And I think that's something we are missing right now. There's so many people out there that either just sharing what has been, recreated by somebody else, or not knowing if this came from the original source because it cannot be validated.
Right. Yeah, I think just having that kind of provenance data can be extremely empowering just by virtue of the analyzability and the longitudinal analysis that opens up as a result.
Absolutely. It's the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is basically the challenge. And I asked AI, by the way, to give me examples of past technologies that came around and then were first distrusted and then were used and agreed upon, basically, that they're of public use. And the best example it came up with was the dot-com bubble. After the burst of the dot-com bubble, everybody was going around saying, like, oh, the internet is a scam. There's everything that's on there. It's just scammers and bad people. And this is the worst thing ever invented. And I think we can all agree, being on this call here right now, that the internet is very good for many things, but it can also be used for bad things, right? So if we are aware of that, we can steer clear of the pitfalls that are presented to us. And using blockchain and understanding blockchain and AI in the same way, being aware that there can be maluses or that there are bad players out there, that's very good and helpful. And then just looking into technology. And one of the other problems that we created for ourselves in this industry was talking too much about the technology and less about the utility. So, I always use our example in the gaming industry. None of our gamers ever asked us how our engine works. They just wanted to play the game, and they just expect the technology to work in the back end. So we need to get to that point in blockchain and AI so that it just works.
How do you think that AI could be practically integrated into a personal workflow? Because we're talking about systemic workflows right now to help filter out potentially false information.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what I addressed here with using the watermark system, right? So if you have a system that can validate original information, then you can use AI to just highlight that information for you. If you're pulling information for preparing for an article, preparing for a talk, preparing for anything that you need information for, you can train the AI to only give you the information from validated sources, right? That would be the everyday use where this technology is being used in the best way, combined with other technologies like blockchain, like NFT protocols, etc., that are allowing you to validate sources. So I've talked to a couple of different publishers right now, just been interested in that space to see where they are going with this. And there is an effort to implement Web3 technology in the validation process so that you can have the sources being validated and publicly shown. That's the beauty of blockchain. Everybody can always see where this piece of information was generated from. And that then is your first step in using AI in the right way to pull the information best. And then obviously all the fun little other uses that you can do with what you can do with AI. I think, even the court cases that we have seen now with News Corp and others where they are now being paid for the information that AI has scraped. I think it's a great example of true information building is being valued again and being paid for again. And that's a new revenue source for almost believed dead appearing newspapers and outlets. So it is fantastic. I think there's going to be a great new world for all of us there.
That matches our our optimism. I think that breakthroughs in natural language understanding make it easier for people to get help from a computer without learning a formal programming language. And so ultimately, the way this plays out is greater individual empowerment.
Yeah, for sure. And accessibility, right? I mean, in so many ways where one of the best examples I can always point to for me is Excel. Why in the world does Excel need to be so complex? And my assumption is the only reason for that is that there's still some engineers that only speak Excel, and so that they still have a job. I don't understand why this cannot be just natural language. And it
They
needs to be
must excel.
They must excel, exactly. So, those are things where, AI can do amazing things and can help people tremendously in building like Excel sheets. I mean, this is a very simple. Obviously, there are much better applications of AI, but it's incredible to see that. I was lucky enough to be invited to one think tank event back in the days in the UK, where we were talking about how can modern technology be used to make the lives of the elderly better. And so really helping people to understand, prevent also scams to them. I mean, I can only imagine, going back to the validation of information, when I look at my grandparents or adjacent grandparents, they are used to what you read in the newspaper that was the truth, right? So that is just truth. That's what it is. It's a journalist, so that's their integrity. So what they will put out there is the truth. So now anything else, I mean, I see this with, majority of my family life in the closer families that are growing older now. They're seeing something on Facebook, the immediate reaction, oh, this must be true, right? Somebody's sharing this, oh, there's an article, oh my God, this is horrendous, this is scary, whatever it is. It's like, no, mom, this is just something that somebody made up, right? So teaching people to that extent that they are just questioning and also being much more critical in their thinking is super helpful. And I think AI can be a great companion there if, associated in the right aspect there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Literally, the world could use more intelligence. Having the infinitely patient, intelligent augmentation.
And companions. I mean, unfortunately, this is another pandemic that we have. Epidemic, I think, is the right term, the loneliness epidemic. And so, having a companion that allows you to talk to, that gives coherent answers and just also reacts properly to you, I think this could be used in a very, very effective way for many people around, not only the elderly, but just, anyone who's lonely. Hopefully it doesn't lead to more loneliness, right? So it needs to have a mechanism built in which brings you out, drives you to connect more. Not that we have a system here or an effect that reminds us of, was it Blade Runner 2048? Right? That would be bad.
Very.
Well, I, by the way, am optimistic about Excel, and I'll really show off my business nerdiness here. I think I'm optimistic about Excel becoming easier because of what I've seen with generative AI and Adobe's Creative Suite. I'm a huge fan of Adobe's innovations recently under Alexander Kostin, and I think that the power of something like Photoshop comes from all of the refinement that Adobe has made for power users. So it's an extraordinary tool, but to me, it's an extraordinarily intimidating tool. And I think that there are ways of incorporating generative AI that save professionals time in their workflows. But when you look at all of the ways in which they've incorporated Gen AI into their portfolio, a lot of it has just been to help casual users make something that matches the idea in their head. And that, I think, is like an existence proof that you can make something more accessible without taking away the power for the hardcore users that really want that obscure function. Yeah. So I'm eager to see that playing out across all kinds of tools, Excel being another.
Yeah, you're highlighting a very important point. And before I answer, I wanted just to highlight and correct myself. It was Blade Runner 2049, not 48. Making sure that all the nerds listening here that I get my badge up on it. Anyhow, so the yes, I couldn't agree more. And there's a famous quote. I mean, I don't actually know if he said it first, but he definitely repeats it very well. Scott Galloway continues to say that it's not the person who it's not AI taking your job. It's going to be the person who understands AI. So, and that's very important. I think one of the messages for anyone who's interested or scared or anything related to AI, continue or engage with it. The number one important message to anyone in this world today is engage with AI wherever you can. Best on a daily basis, even if it's just for a simple task, just understanding how it works, how it is applied, and how these prompts work, right? And so I think it's very important, just what you said also, Michael, is the appeal here where, for example, for creators, it's so much easier to create something new from an inspiration, from something that you can show somebody, hey, this is the direction I want to go. Can you make this great now, right? Before you go back and forth 10 times to get to the point of that, to the first initial starting point, to define that. You can take that, you can DALL, whatever tool you want to use, you can use that to create that starting point and now give it to a real creative person to make something amazing out of that. And that real creative person can now use AI also. Instead of just making one, it can make 10 and just scale, right? And never be done never done before fashion. So it's really impressive and it's incredible. I think our productivity will go through the roof, and it's going to be incredible in the next decades to see what we'll be able to do with it.
Right? I was looking at the oldest Apple ads that I could find. These black and white ads, often with a huge amount of text that ran in magazines. And to my shock, because Apple is now such a refined product company, the promises of value from these really early ads, the suggested use cases, I kid you not, involved programming to organize your record collection, which is like crazy. Like that is not an amazing value prop, right? Like I'm going to learn BASIC to organize my LPs. Thanks. But the most common theme was actually like, buy a computer so you can learn how computers work. Like that was it. It was just like, this is coming. This is going to change the world. Are you going to change along with it, or are you going to be left behind? Was like a central theme of selling the Apple II.
It's incredible, right? That reminds me. So I just flew back from San Francisco and I was watching Hidden Figures. I don't know if you're familiar with that. A beautiful, beautiful movie. Somebody who hasn't watched it, I highly recommend it. So about in the 60s, first circulation of the Earth and the Apollo missions, and these three ladies, women of color, that were employed by the NASA. So Olivia Spence's character, being one of the basically the crew chief, so to speak, of the calculators there, which everything was done by hand, gets introduced to the first IBM computer. And then everybody's trying to load it into, these huge, like, room-filling machines that take over a whole storage facility, basically. And then, it's the amazing innovations can do 24,000 computation a second, right? Incredible. So here, and she learns that she gets the book, she gets the guidebook, basically, out of the library to learn about it and to be the first. And now she takes over the whole team, brings all her ladies, teaches their ladies the computers, and brings them into the division to run the IBM NASA computer. So to your point, really getting engaged early, learning about the new technologies is the most effective way to beat the curve, basically, to be the first to beat the competition. And I highly recommend this to anyone I talk to, especially the younger generations. If you want to stand out, just sit down in the evenings, forget about the bars. Socializing is still important, but go there, sit down, learn about the new things, how they work and how you can apply them, and just wow the other people. Because I always have these aha moments, me being in the gaming industry, starting out of the military, running my first marketing company. We as human beings, often 70% of Americans, I just heard that stat, feel they are imposters when they talk about their work, because they feel like, oh, they just learned this somewhere in the end on the internet. And but this is the way we work, right? So this is the way the human brain works. We're learning something, we're getting better at it, we're putting the 10,000 hours in it, and we're an expert. So somewhere you need to start. Everybody started somewhere. So putting this effort in, getting better in what you want to be better in, and then you're separating yourself from the competition is the best way to go. And it doesn't matter who you come across. It's always the case that you're finding yourself in a better position than others, and you can actually teach them how it works. And Web3 for me is the best example. Now, me being in this fairly new industry, and I feel like, oh, everybody knows this already. And I was just talking to a Yale professor who was asking me then, well, this sounds all interesting. Can you explain to me what's the difference between Web 2 and Web 3? So it's like the foundation, right? And I felt like I completely glossed over that, because I thought like, oh, everybody's aware of that anyways, right? But so this is just to highlight, nobody is aware of everything, and there's always a position for you to shine. And all these tools can make this even easier to do so.
Right. Yeah. I my touchstone for this kind of thinking is my children, and particularly memories of my children as toddlers. At some point, I think this can happen to you without thinking about it. You kind of decide how you are, right? In very static terms. And so my antidote is to think like a toddler, saying, I'm just not a person who feeds myself. Like I'm just a person who needs to be spoon-fed, right? It's like an accurate description of yourself at some point. Like the problem with it is not that it's inaccurate. The problem is treating it like it's a forever feature of you and not just a temporary moment.
Couldn't agree more. And this is a great method also to talk to AI. I actually asked for one of my panels. I think, Amna, you might have been at one of these Web3 panels. And I asked AI to explain blockchain to me as if I was a 5-year-old. And so to the same extent, so I don't have children, so I have to use AI for this. And so if you can go to your children and have it and explain it to them and they understand it, I think then you are on a good way, right? You are going in the right direction. And I encourage everyone who wants to get in touch with the new technologies to really, like I said, embrace it. And I do have full conversations with, Gemini or formerly Bard or the ChatGPT, the new version. And so it's very interesting to see this. And I come from a generation that was fully embraced in Terminator. So I'm always very polite to my AI. So I might be scared in the future. And hey, don't lose the politeness in front of the
Nice.
machines.
Oh yeah, I'm always making sure to add please and thank you. May you, yeah.
That's
And then when
an amazing piece of work. Could we maybe alter this a little bit?
It's great. It's great. I was about to ask you, and you kind of touched on it, which of the AI tools that you are using now are your favorite, I guess, in terms of productivity and just in general?
So, yeah, I use mainly two, Gemini and ChatGPT, the latest version, and with ChatGPT also DALL-E. And the reason for that is I do actually like the conversational tone of Gemini better. Kind of like has like a feel to it that I like. I started just recently to embark on this whole LinkedIn influencer journey. And quick plug for myself, I now got this Web3 top voice of Web3 badge, which got me there. And so the fun part here was the experience of how to get there and how to properly also could provide content, develop content to get to this point. So I went through this whole with a friend, went through this whole process of training my ChatGPT account to learn my voice. And Gemini isn't there yet. So Gemini, you can teach certain things, but not as a common user because you don't really have an account there, right? And I'm just loosely speaking now from my experience. I might have missed something there, but from my experience, you can't set an account. So that makes sense because it's just like an open software that you access with your Google account. Apparently, these responses are not directly tied to your original Google account. You can still find the answers, but it's not like teachable as it is right now by the common user. ChatGPT, however, allows you to create a prompt. So what I did is I wrote my first 6, 7, 8 posts myself using my voice that I wanted to be heard. So the way I speak, conversational, etc., and so forth. So and I uploaded it, and we went through this process. So imagine you are a Web3 and gaming expert, la, la, la. So this is the voice that I want you to learn. And then, describe the voice back to me and write something in this voice. So we went really back and forth. So it was really a teacher-trainee experience. And then now Chat has it down. So I just say like, hey, in my voice, write me an article about this topic, use these 3 articles that I just read as a reference. And it condenses the topics. And I have to say, it's frequently impressive. So in the beginning, and it's changed now also from ChatGPT 4 to 4.0. I had to edit a lot after this coming out, just like, the wording a little bit wonky, some references, I don't know. Obviously, I read everything every time to make sure it's accurate. But now the result is like, I'm sitting there like, Jesus, I don't have to edit anything. This is really good. Wow. So, and that is impressive. So I'm a big fan of ChatGPT. I haven't really used too many of the other tools yet. Last thing I want to say to DALL-E. DALL-E is great now too. It also, with the new version, it can be taught in a way to create a corporate design, so to speak. So to repeat that style language. However, it's sometimes still very wonky. It's still, the whole image creation on text comes out sometimes completely weird, but the actual image creation like itself is very accurate and creates continuously great results.
That's helpful. Thank you. I might try that myself.
You should. And Michael,
Yeah.
your experiences with the Adobe software is probably equally satisfying, right?
I'm broadly curious about obsessive craftsmanship. So it led me here to evaluate the new Adobe tools is really just that curiosity about great tool makers who are really singularly focused in one particular direction. So I just like craftsmen at work, and so I test a broad variety of tools. I've also been very, very pleased lately with Anthropic's Sonnet 3.5. Great model. I love the user engagement. Yeah, like the tone that the user interface presents. I'm also a big fan of ChatGPT, and I'm trying to create. I like taking, especially these new generative AI tools, and taking them out of the digital domain and putting them in places that you don't expect. For instance, in my own experimentation with DALL-E, the best reaction I've gotten so far, I made a Valentine's Day card for my wife by generating an impossible image in DALL-E and then projecting it onto a Polaroid. So I handed her this Polaroid of a snow-covered scene that couldn't really exist in reality with this heart-shaped lantern. And that hit very well, even though it was, February of 2024, where we've all seen AI generated images, because you don't see them on a physical object so much. So, so I've been doing a lot of that kind of like crossing the streams, like, ooh, how do I take this out of the digital domain and put it somewhere unexpected?
That's impressive. I would actually love to see that. It's really, it's great. So that brings me back to the point that we discussed earlier. It's really the function that you can now bring what you have in mind to paper, so to speak, right? For the lack of a better term, to actually make it reality. And even if you're not skilled in, Photoshop and all of these things. And it's impressive how it does that. And I was preparing a post picture where we are talking about the Web 2 versus Web 3, like the ownership model. Highlighting ownership, I wanted to make sure that basically my character that I created, the comic booky character that is now the avatar that is like following all these different posts, he's like holding these different these different assets in its arms. And I said like, yeah, and one like stuffed unicorn. And it looks so funny. It's like this ninja character, knight character, like holding the like purple stuffed unicorn now in this arm.
Marvelous.
I love it. It's really
So cool.
I'm so excited about what happens when a couple billion people are armed with a magic paintbrush to make what they're dreaming of without spending 10 years on like the draftsmanship skill first. Yeah.
We coming to the close of our time though, but this conversation's amazing and I wish we could keep it going because it's so informative and very fun. But Jan, how could people find you online?
Oh yeah, so easy on LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn, just Jan Rosner, Jan, and then ROESSNER. That's my LinkedIn profile. And then on Instagram, the same thing, the same handle, just my name. And those are the main two channels that I use. I have to admit, I'm not a big Twitter X user. It's just the way it is. And yeah, that's the best.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you.